The goal of Mussar is tikkun olam. It's to repair the world by using our free will. And Seder and Pesach touches on these ideas very directly, and Mussar can most definitely enrich our Seders and our discussions by picking up on these themes. Some of the ways that we can include Mussar into our Seder discussion is, first of all, by remembering that Pesach is a holiday of freedom and choice. Slavery takes away human free will, and that's the challenge of Egypt, and that continues to be the challenge globally and in our lives personally. So to be able to remember and discuss that the slaves in Egypt, the ancient Israelites, had to choose to leave Egypt. That final night was a night of choice. And we're told in the Midrash that many of the Israelites chose not to leave because they couldn't face freedom. And there were non-Israelites who chose to leave. And of course, we included them, and they became part of the nation that left. A free will choice is a choice of freedom, and that's the very first step. So in our Seders, the discussion can very much talk about which are the groups that you feel do promote tikkun olam and which are the ones that don't. Which are the groups that we see around us, either socially, social media, whether it's a political group, whether it's an international group. All these groups are growing and growing around us. And some of them definitely allow for free will, definitely allow for promoting of repairing the world, but not all of them do. And it's a really important educational moment to hear from others. What do they know about these groups? What do you know about these groups? To have that discussion as a tikkun olam discussion at the Seder. Another idea is that much of the Seder reinforces the Jewish value of education. It gears towards our children. The children should ask questions. The children should sing. We fill the table with these symbols that are anomalous and they taste different and they look different. And it's really all to prompt the kids to ask questions. But when we look at it very closely, it's the idea of a cultural education. We want the children to ask Jewish questions. We want them to ask questions of history. We want them to ask questions of theology, questions of nationhood, Jewish peoplehood. Those are the questions we want them to ask. So one of the discussions to have with the idea of tikkun olam, repairing the world, is to broaden that aspect and have a discussion about whether you feel cultural education in today's world should be multicultural education. Are we preparing our children to encounter other cultures and to know the distinctiveness of their own and the appreciation of another culture? And how are they supposed to assess the world around them with all those cultures? Do you feel that someone sitting in one culture can actually teach of another culture? Or is that something that can only happen internally? Those are the kinds of rich discussions that the Seder will prompt that we can have. It's the appropriate time to have it. Another important theme in the Haggadah, the Seder, is how can we balance between justice and mercy? We see it all over the Seder, the idea of the plagues, the idea of mercy. How do those two speak to each other? And when we look at that and tikkun olam and Mussar informing that moment at the Seder, the question would be, what issues in your life trigger a large response from you, which is a response to seek justice? And what are the issues in your life that trigger a large response in you of a response to seek mercy? The idea of discussing how a counter view could be valid within the same issue. How with you, it could trigger justice, and someone else around the table might say, no, with me, it triggers mercy. Having that discussion. And that goes back to the idea that the sages have told us you can't choose a different view if you don't try to understand the different view from within that perspective. I do want to hear from someone else why it would trigger a different response within them. That's where tikkun olam sits. It sits in my ability to have more choices, to see more options, to hear the other perspective. And then, of course, at the Seder table where my children are sitting there, to learn that that's how we engage in discourse. Have a wonderful Pesach, everyone.